Welcome to HortTube. My name is Jim Putnam. This is the second video in my propagation series for 2020. The first video I went through the system that I've set up for this year, and I'm using an electronic leaf, which basically water gets on that leaf and it weights it down and turns it off, and as it dries out it pops back up and turns the water back on, the mist back on, and keeps the leaves on our unrooted cuttings wet because they have no roots. They have no ability to get water any other way. So we keep them moist until they get roots on them, and then we move them off the mist. I showed all the materials I'd be using in this season, except I left out rooting hormone. I use Dip and Grow frequently in the old videos, mostly Dip and Grow, and I also have some Clonex, which is a gel that either one will work. Basically, the rooting hormones are going to kind of burn the bottom of the cutting a little bit, and that just kind of sets in motion callousing that happens at the bottom of the cuttings that I'll show you over the course of a few weeks. And then that's where the roots initialize from. The things I'm sticking today probably don't need rooting hormone, but what you'll find, and what I've noticed over 20 some years of doing this, is if you use the rooting hormone, you'll get more roots initiating than you will without. And so even though you got roots either way, having 2 or 3 little roots as opposed to 10, 12 plus roots initiating at the same time can mean a lot of difference in the rate of growth and the overwintering of your cuttings in that first season. So that's the reason I use it. There are organic rooting hormones as well if you're interested in that, but I'll link these down below in the description. But I think that's the thing I left out yesterday. I went around my yard this morning and just grabbed some of the easiest things I could find to root. I've got some of this hibiscus that everybody's been admiring on the channel back here. I did those from seed, and I'll do them from seed again next year, but I also can root the cuttings super easy. And I've got some lantana and several other things. So I'm going to get started cutting these up into the first tray and get that tray into that greenhouse and see if we can get some roots on these things, or at least get them calloused in the next few days, and then I'll know my system's working, and then I can quickly move on and start putting up videos with harder to root things, or things that just take longer to root. So let's take a look at the setup here. I've got the tray that I did yesterday. It's a 50-50 mix of peat moss and perlite. I showed myself mixing that yesterday, and then it's lightly moistened. It sometimes takes a lot of water to actually get this peat moss moist, and so that's where I've got that. And then I've got the Clonex rooting hormone right here, and I just poured it into a cap right here. This gel does a good job of just sticking to the bottom of the cuttings. I gathered up my cuttings this morning in a plastic bag right here, and they were moist because I actually had a hurricane overnight, and so everything in there is the leaves are moist on them. If you're taking cuttings off of plants and everything you're putting in the bag is dry, you want to put some water in the bag and then tear a hole in one corner so that a lot of the water runs out. We don't excess water in there, but we do want them to stay moist while they're in the bag, waiting for us to get them cut up and put into the flat. The first thing I'm going to take cuttings on or do is these hibiscus right here. This one's called Mahogany Splendor, and I actually did these from seed, but they're going to be super easy to root as well. What I want sticking down below the soil right there is I want the set of bottom leaves right here. If I actually grab that and pull that right there, it'll actually create a wound down the side right there, and that wound is exactly where roots are going to initiate from. I'll cut that a little bit smaller than that. I don't want it to be quite that long, but I've got maybe a 1-inch wound now on the bottom of this. Right above the next set of leaves, I'll cut that off just like that. What I'm left with here is that, and I'm going to take this long leaf off the side right there. Okay, so that's what I'm left with. And almost every cutting you see me take, the rest of the time I'm showing this, is going to look like this. It's going to have this kind of central piece right here that's pretty firm. It's not overly woody at this point, but it's not super soft either. This is still growing right here, and I don't want new growth on my cuttings, so I'm going to stop that growth right there on the end, just like that. And so what I'm left with is about a 3-inch long, cutting. It's wounded at the bottom inch right there. And then I've got growth coming off the side of it where these leaves are gonna have water sitting on them from that mist. And that's pretty much a perfect cutting. I'm gonna dip that into the rooting gel. That gel does a good job of sticking to the end of that cutting. These trays, the cells on these trays are about 2 inches deep. You can see that right there. The bottom ½ inch or so, it just stays too wet down at the bottom. You don't want your cutting stuck that deep. And so I want to stick these in here. If you need to, you can use a pen or a pencil or something like that and start your holes already. These are firm enough that these aren't a problem just to stick straight down into this mix. But I'm going to hold it about like that. So I'm putting about 1 inch or 1.5 inches of that cutting down into that mix. And that's it right there. And I'll firm it in with 2 fingers just like that. Super, super easy, really. Let's do another one. So I'm going to go up that stem, you know, to that next group of leaves. And I'm going to pull that off exactly the same, creating that same wound that we created before. And then I'm going to go up above that next set of leaves right there. And that's what I'm left with. You can see that. I'll get that out of there so you can see it. But I've got the wound on that bottom inch right there. I've got about a 3-inch long cutting. I'm taking that leaf off the side. Okay, I'm stopping the growth on this cutting right here because it'll try to use water that it doesn't have because it doesn't have roots. Okay, I'm sticking this into this rooting gel and I'm sticking it down into the soil mix about halfway down, and then I'm firming it in just like that. Quick and easy. So let's do one more. Looks like I can get one more off of this one. I'm going to cut it above that second group of leaves. I'm going to peel the bottom off of this one. This one didn't peel the same. It just did then. If it doesn't peel, you can take the side of your blade and just do right there. Just create that little wound on the side of it. Okay, I'm going to take that leaf off just like that, dipping it in the rooting hormone, sticking it down about halfway in there, pinching it in. So I went ahead and finished the 2 rows of hibiscus. If you're going to label these, and I'll show you that next week. I haven't gotten my plastic labels out yet. But when I label these, make sure you're using a waterproof marker. It's another thing you can get on Amazon or wherever. It just needs to be waterproof because we're going to put it in a wet environment and it will wash off. I typically will take like a 6-inch plastic marker and I'll cut them in half so I can, and then I'll use the backs of them the next time so I get quite a bit of use out of them. The next thing I'm going to root are these lantana, and I just did exactly the same thing. I took that bottom branch there and peeled it back, and then I'm going up to the next set of leaves here. We definitely don't want the flowers on these in the greenhouse. And we're going to go ahead and stop this new growth. And I'm just going to take one side completely off like that. And so that's what I'm going to end up with on that lantana. So basically the same exact thing. It's a little bit longer because the distance between the leaf nodes is a little bit longer, but that's the only reason it ends up being a little longer than that hibiscus. But again, I've got this part wounded down here at the bottom. I've got, went up to above the next leaf node. I cut half of that off because I just don't need it. And then I stopped the growth on that side right there. I'm dipping it in the gel, and right there, same thing, about 1.5 inches down. I'm only going to get two cuttings off of this one because I'm going to come up right below that next set of leaves and pull that stuff off, and that will create my wound right there, and then go up above that next set of leaves right there. And I'll just leave both of those leaves on. That's no big deal, but that's a nice looking cutting right there. Again, pinching it in there, not too deep. Here's my next branch from that lantana. This is new gold lantana. I'm pulling up those bottom pieces off. I'm cutting it just a little bit. I'm leaving about a 1/2 inch of that wound at the bottom. I'm going up above the next set of leaves and cutting that off. I'm going to go ahead and cut one side of this completely off. Take that flower bud off and stop this new growth. Boom, it's the same thing over and over and over again. The next thing I'm going to root is super, super easy, and a sweet potato vine. Actually, I could just leave these on the ground and they would root in the ground, but I'm going to do the same exact thing on these. I'm taking that bottom that bottom leaf off. I'm leaving that next group of leaves on. I'm taking the new growth off. I'm wounding the bottom of it because these don't peel off as easy. Just like that. So the cutting ends up looking exactly the same. So I'll go up 2 leaves basically here, right there. You see that? Cut that. I'll take this bottom leaf off, cut it just below that spot. Okay, and then I'll take, there's where that new growth is coming from right there, just like that. I really don't even need that big leaf because I got one other leaf on there. But again, that's super easy. I'll dip it in the gel and stick it in there. Again, these sweet potato vines will root so fast. I'm going to go up the 3rd leaf on here where these start to get closer together, and I'll take these two bottom leaves off, just like that. And I'm going to wound the bottom, just like that. And this is fine. When you start getting big leaves like this, I'll arrange them in this flat so that they're not overlapping something else and preventing that mist from getting down to them. The next thing I'm going to root is some Homestead Purple Verbena, and it's exactly the same thing. One thing I want you to pay attention to when you're collecting cuttings is to make sure they don't have disease or insect problems. We don't want any, we don't want to introduce issues into our into the rooting house. But on the verbena, that's all you're going to end up with. That's about a 2-inch long cutting. It's wounded down here where the set of leaves was down below it, and I'm leaving the rest of that on there. Verbena roots super easy. I mean, really, they'll root pretty much anywhere. So the side branches on the verbena will root. Okay, so here's a piece right here. I'm taking those bottom 2 leaves off. That creates that wound. Then I'm cutting it right above that next place. There's my cutting. Typically, I'd prep all these cuttings and then I'd just stick this whole flat at one time. I wouldn't be doing them one at a time like this. This is kind of a slow process. I'd rather process them, all 50 cuttings and then put them in there. Okay, so here's another one where I've got the bottom of that wounded, where I had another set, but this has got a lot of new growth on it. You can see that. So I'm going to stop this new growth on both of those sides, just like that. Dip it in the gel and put them in there. But again, this cutting's exactly the same. So the last super easy thing for this video will be these coleus. I've got several varieties of coleus around the yard. Again, it should root really quickly. I'll pull those bottom leaves off, same as I've been doing. Cut it kind of close to there, just like that. Remove just above the next leaf right there. I don't want these big giant leaves on here really. And I can just leave that little side leaf right there. That's totally adequate. This thing will root with no problem whatsoever. Dip it in the gel, stick it into the flat, same as I've been doing. And let's see. So here's another one. I'll take the bottom leaves off just like that. That creates that wound that I'm looking for. And again, I'll take these big leaves off of it like that. Then I'll just take one side of that off and stop that new growth. So it's the same process over and over again. You see how that cutting looks. Dipping it in the gel and bam, no problem. I can get another one out of this, it looks like, for sure. I'll just stop this new growth up here on the top. Take that big leaf off right there. Same thing. So one thing I didn't mention in the first video was that this electronic leaf needs to be level. And so you need to level it across the top right here and on the side. And so it needs to be vertically level and horizontally level right there to work properly. And then you kind of have to fiddle with the counterbalance. There's a counterweight on the back of it that I showed yesterday, and you have to fiddle with that to get it just right. What I want to see is that the leaves on these stay moist, and then they're allowed to almost dry off, and then this thing pop up. And so, getting that dialed in is the purpose of this video, of putting in some super easy to root things. Honestly, this verbena and the sweet potato vine probably could root anywhere. The coleus, same thing. Just super easy to root. They could probably, the coleus could just go in water and be rooted in water without any problem. So, but again, I'm putting some things that are tough so that I can just monitor this water for a couple days. Just it being a new system. But again, make sure the thing's level, and you know, again, we're trying to time this drying off and popping up at the same time this is drying off and popping up. And so I'll just raise it up one time with my finger just to show you here. It turns on, the water runs for, I don't know, 3-4 seconds. That's enough to weight it back down, and that puts an even mist here on our cuttings. So thanks very much for watching this video. I'll wait 3 or 4 days, monitor this, get this dialed in just right, and then I'll come back with a series of several videos filling the space in. Thanks for watching.